Today on Notsam Wrestling, we start to unpack everything that's going on with Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens and determine who is going to turn on who. We break down everything that happened at AEW All In, and it was a lot. And is Roman Reigns really the GOAT? John Cena thinks so. What do we say? This is Notsam Wrestling. Welcome to Notsam Wrestling. And yes, as the summer starts to draw to a close, right around the time that any of us that were watching wrestling for years and years and years and years would think, okay, we got SummerSlam at the end of the summer, and that's it. Now we've got a lineup where we get All In, then we get WWE Bash in Berlin, then we get NXT No Mercy, and I think like All Out might be that same weekend or the next weekend after that, whatever. We got a lot of wrestling as we head into the fall, but we can't even look that far ahead because of everything that is happening right in front of our faces. And I'm talking about this saga of Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens. We were talking about it here on the show, about the idea that Cody Rhodes has had a lot of stories and rivalries since he's been champion that start with him having respect for his opponent. And I think I was taken a little bit out of context. A clip of me talking about that was kind of pushed forward on Twitter and gotten like, yeah, this is right. And while it's not wrong, and I don't disagree with anything I said in that statement, the context of it was kind of removed, where my opinion on it a couple of weeks ago was that was more an example, that those were the reasons why I thought that this Kevin Owens, Cody Rhodes story had far more meat on the bone than was on the surface. Keep in mind, before SummerSlam, I was talking about the idea that this friendship between Kevin Owens and Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes was being built with the inevitability of not only Randy Orton turning on Cody Rhodes, because everybody's talked about that with Randy Orton constantly looking at that WWE championship, but also Kevin Owens turning on Cody Rhodes. I said this a long time ago, and there were people that said, why would Kevin Owens have to turn on Cody Rhodes? It would make sense for Randy Orton. He's the Viper. They have all this history with legacy. He wants the title and all that, but why Kevin Owens? Because why not Kevin Owens? Is there a story here? Yes. Yes, there's a story here. Right now, the story is what is going on beneath the surface. There have even been people that are thinking that now is the right time for Cody Rhodes to turn on Kevin Owens for the ultimate swerve to happen. Well, I think we go back and we look at SmackDown, right? And we see Kevin Owens, and he is providing that great example of why we like Kevin Owens here on Not Sam Wrestling so much, because he's the only character on the show that watches the show forever. You'd watch WWE, and as a viewer that watches every week, you'd know how things were going to go, yet somehow these tropes would surprise these superstars that they consistently happen to. Kevin Owens is the only person that goes home and watches both Raw and SmackDown, so he's kind of aware of everything that happens, right? So when Cody Rhodes is doing the Grayson Waller effect, and Grayson Waller is trying to drive that wedge between Cody and Kevin Owens, and even plays the video of Kevin Owens betraying all of his partners. He even had Chris Jericho. Why is my name on this list? As part of the video package, which I thought was excellent. Kevin Owens comes out to defend himself, and just as he's coming out, instead of doing the whole rigmarole, the whole dog and pony show, while Cody Rhodes is going, well, I trust Kevin, but clearly Grayson Waller has crept into that big brain of his. Kevin Owens comes out and just immediately says, okay, we know where this is going to go. If Nick Aldis could just come out and make the tag match already. Because we know, anybody that's watched the show that knows that there's two heels in the ring, Cody Rhodes is in the ring, and Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens are 8 days away from having a WWE title match. What do you think is going to happen on the main event of that show? Well, Kevin Owens watches the shows consistently. He knows where this is going, so why make us sit through it? If everybody involved knows, he brings out Nick Aldis. He says, we know what's going on here. Could you just make this match? This is this is how this scenario plays out. And Nick Aldis makes the match, and we go to the main event of the show with Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens versus Grayson Waller and Austin Theory, A-Town Down Under. And there is this feeling of Kevin Owens being the only guy who watches the show, acknowledges what happens on the show every week, and then makes us as the viewer go, oh, it's not like silly that we watch every week because we know what's going to happen, and for some reason these stars don't. It's actually good that we watch the show every week because now we're on the same track as the smartest superstar on the show, Kevin Owens. Here's my thing. As everybody looks at this Kevin Owens-Cody Rhodes match and goes, which way is it going to go? First of all, as I said last week, if you watched in the email segment, the idea of Cody Rhodes turning heel now, I understand. I've seen season 3 of The Boys as well. I understand that at some point, Homelander needs to embrace who he is at his core. But in the meantime, people are still adoring Homelander. We're not there yet. This idea that Cody Rhodes needs to eventually turn heel and now's the time is ridiculous. Cody Rhodes should not turn heel anytime soon. And if you look, and sometimes we see where things are going. And because we see where things are going, we come up with these scenarios for a swerve, just almost for the sake of a swerve, for the sake of a swerve, right? Just so it's something different. Oh, I didn't see that coming. But there are, and a lot of times that's great. A lot of times as a wrestling fan, surprise is a huge element of what draws us to this product. But other times, logic is important. Other times, instead of just a swerve for the sake of a swerve, you want to see something that just makes sense. And the reason that you see it coming a mile away, and the reason that everybody sees it coming a mile away, is because it's the logical progression of events, and it makes sense. And the only logical progression of events here is that even though it's been forecast a million ways from Sunday, Kevin Owens, I would like to see, should turn on Cody Rhodes. I want to see Kevin Owens turn on Cody Rhodes. I want Cody Rhodes to be that guy who, it's not that he didn't see it coming. He saw it coming. You could see it in his eyes. As Grayson Waller is telling him this, he's like, you're right. And I know that you're right. And he's questioning Kevin Owens the entire time on SmackDown. You're good, right? We're cool, right? He knows that Kevin Owens was like looking at the title, running towards Cody, and it almost seemed like he was going to nail Cody with the championship before he just handed Cody the championship and ran all the way to the rope. Cody knows this. It's not that Cody's stupid. It's that Cody is such a good human being that he looks for the best in all the people around him, and he sees the best. That's what makes him such a good person. That's what makes him a true babyface, is that he sees the best in all the people around him. What I'm hoping we're seeing play out with Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes is a real-life showcase of that story about the frog and the scorpion, where the frog and the scorpion are both at the bay, right? They're both right in front of the pond. And the scorpion goes, "Frog, I'd really love to get across this pond. Can I ride on your back?" And that's Kevin Owens. And Cody Rhodes is the frog going, "Scorpion, why would I give you a ride? You're going to sting me." And the scorpion goes, "No, Cody Rhodes, frog, I'm not going to sting you. I want to get across the pond just as badly as you do. And trust me, by the time we get across the pond, you'll have me off your back anyway. And even if you don't, I'll be so grateful that you got me there that I would never sting you." And the frog goes, "You know what? You're right. Scorpion, I feel like you've seen the error of your ways. I'm going to go ahead and give you this ride because I'm such a good guy. I'm a frog, for God's sake. What could possibly have a better disposition than a frog. And so he lets the scorpion ride on his back, and the frog starts going halfway through the pond, and the scorpion stings him. And the frog goes, "Scorpion, why did you just do that? Like, we're both going to drown now." And the scorpion goes, "Because, frog, I'm a scorpion. It's my nature. This was inevitable. There was no other way this was ever going to go." No matter how much you want people to be good, no matter how much you want to see this gold nugget inside of somebody that everybody else sees as a villainous person, no matter how badly you want them to be good, when you're wrong, you're wrong. You can't will somebody to be the potential of the human being that you see in them. That, to me, is the story that we're seeing right now with Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens. Unless Kevin Owens isn't going to turn on anybody and we just have a great catch-as-catch-can competition between two great friends. That's not as exciting to me. I feel like these are lessons that Cody needs to learn along the way. That he's too trusting and he sees the good in people. And maybe, eventually, that's what turns him into a villain. But what Cody's got to do is realize that he's looking down at the WWE Undisputed Championship. And what that championship means is your friends are gone. You don't have any friends anymore. Because the championship that Cody Rhodes is holding is the same championship that Roman Reigns held hostage for 3.5 years. Is the same championship that Kevin Owens made no secret about the fact that he wanted to take from Roman Reigns, that he felt that he had Roman Reigns beaten multiple times, that he watched his best friend Sami Zayn get sucked in by, okay? Realistically, that championship is still associated with this reign that Roman Reigns was on. And this idea that everybody that wanted that title when Roman held it are just going to be happy now that Roman doesn't have it. We're led to believe that the characters that these individuals are playing when they become WWE superstars are just as competitive as any professional athlete, which means that while, yes, the entire locker room wanted the title to be off of Roman Reigns, that doesn't mean that the entire locker room wants Cody Rhodes to be the WWE champion. The entire locker room feels that they individually should be the WWE champion. Which is why I think that Kevin Owens is going to be able to betray Cody Rhodes. I think Randy Orton is going to be able to betray Cody Rhodes. Because there are layers to this. To be trusting, I mean, idiots are trusting, right? But also, good-hearted people are trusting. People that see the potential in others to be good are trusting. And the idea that from a macro perspective, meaning big picture, Cody actually has to trade off. If he wants to be successful as WWE champion, finish the story, the thing that he's here for, he has to give up that part of him that sees the good and the potential good in everybody and is willing to do selfless things for them. Whether it's get Jey Uso on Monday Night Raw, whether it's get Kevin Owens in the main event of Bash in Berlin. Because when you're not champion, that's beautiful and everybody loves you for it. But when you are champion, people see it as a weakness. So they come and they try to take that title away from you, taking advantage of that. And that leaves Cody Rhodes in this position. Where does he want to be WWE champion bad enough that he'll sacrifice the thing that makes him good? Ultimately, I think he will. But that is way, way, way down the road. And it makes me excited about everything that I'm seeing with Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens. I felt that way watching SmackDown this week. I said, okay, we're telling a story with layers here. And that while if Kevin Owens turns on Cody Rhodes, people will see that as a predictable move. And Cody will probably still not lose the title to Kevin Owens. However, the bigger picture story is not that Kevin Owens has turned on Cody Rhodes. The bigger picture story is the fact that the WWE Championship has put Cody Rhodes in a position where he can no longer have friends and he can no longer trust people. And that is going to change the core of who Cody Rhodes is. You got to let him cook. The story that we're getting with Cody and Kevin right now has a little bit to do with what's going on with Cody and Kevin right now, but potentially has a lot to do with the long-term evolution of who Cody Rhodes is as WWE champion. And we saw the way that that WWE championship changed Roman Reigns. You know, we were talking about the fact that 10 years removed from the Royal Rumble where he got booed out of the building is now, is that the Roman Reigns we're seeing now is the result of a 10-plus year experiment and, quite honestly, a successful result. It's worth all the investment if this is what you get out of it. And what is this? What is this that you get out of it? Well, if you ask John Cena, it's the greatest of all time. It's the GOAT. John Cena was on Shannon Sharp's podcast, Club Shay Shay. And Shay Shay, asked John Cena who the GOAT is. He said Ric Flair has said Shawn Michaels. He said somebody else said John Cena. I don't remember all the examples that he used, but he said John Cena, who's the GOAT. And it's not in John Cena's nature to give himself the title. But it was interesting, and the clip has gone out to all the wrestling sources because he did say that Roman Reigns, to him, is the greatest of all time. And he admitted that it's odd to talk about a current active superstar with years in front of them as already being the greatest of all time. But John Cena talked about it from a numbers perspective. First, he talked about the fact that Roman Reigns has always been a main event level player. Coming in as a member of the Shield, all three of those guys were put in a top level position. And frankly, I mean, Seth Rollins hasn't dropped off either. He's never dropped out of the main event scene. And Dean Ambrose never really, I mean, you can make an argument maybe at the very, very end, but not really. Dean Ambrose never really dropped out of the main event scene from the time that he came in with the Shield. And that's not stuff that happens just because somebody says it should be. Roman Reigns does not stay in the main event spot just because, forever, just because the person doing the booking says it should be. Right? Like if Roman Reigns is truly bad for business to a point that he ain't getting better and it's not getting better, he's not staying there. There have been plenty of people that can't God bless him. Look at Lex Luger in 1993. Lex Luger in 1993 was literally put on the track to be the next Hulk Hogan. I mean, he was given the world. Body slamming Yokozuna, going on a tour, getting the SummerSlam main event. It was like the entire machine was behind him. But the realization came that Lex Luger might not be the guy. And so maybe we shouldn't do this after all. And it never happened. That realization never clicked in for Roman Reigns. And you could argue that he probably shouldn't have been in the position, during, that first WrestleMania 31, 32, 33. I mean, it wasn't working then. And they tried everything, sure. You know what I mean? Main event with Brock. They had to bring in Seth. Main event with Hunter. Still not quite there. Beating The Undertaker. Still not quite there. However, whether people liked him or hated him, whether they cheered him or booed him, they viewed him as a star. he was always looked at as a star. So that part is true. Now, I think the thing that you have to take into effect is that starting in 2020, 4 years ago, 5 years ago almost, 4 years ago at SummerSlam, I guess, Roman Reigns became an industry-shifting top guy. And Roman Reigns does not get to be an industry-shifting top guy had it not been for the foundation that was built underneath him of being a top guy the whole time. John also brings up numbers. You know, he talks about the fact that the stock, you know, since Roman Reigns started to now has gone from whatever, you know, $11 to $100 or whatever it is. And while, yes, that has a lot to do with a lot of other things, ultimately, the top guy has the business on his shoulders. That's the way the business has always been. I found this interesting for a couple of reasons. Number one, by John Cena's own metrics, you could make, I mean, that those metrics are what puts John Cena in the conversation for greatest of all time, because John Cena was able to be the top guy during a time where business was not as easy for the WWE. John Cena was able to be the top guy during a time that they did not do a great job building an undercard. So there really wasn't a second under him, right? Whereas right now, for instance, the roster is completely robust, full of stars. A lot of the time that John Cena was a top guy, really not as much. But he was still able to persevere, and he was still able to keep business to a point where it needed to be. So that's interesting. But what I think is the most interesting, right, is that everything counts. I had this conversation with Paul Heyman. I've had this guy. I mean, we know this. This is literally rule number 3 of Notsam Wrestling. Everything counts. And in a world where everything counts, John Cena said on Club Shay Shay that The Rock is number 2 to Roman Reigns, because as much as everything he said about Roman Reigns is true about The Rock, the numbers just aren't there. Roman Reigns' numbers are better. This is what John Cena said. He said Dwayne's number 2, Roman is number 1. I'm not saying it will happen, but look, I mean, ultimately, both once in a lifetime and twice in a lifetime, WrestleMania, what was it, 28 and 29, John Cena versus The Rock was really started, and the bubbling happened when John Cena went out in the press and talked about The Rock going away to make movies and besmirched the name of the great one, of the final boss. John Cena's coming back to the WWE in 2025. I think he said whatever it was, 30, 35 dates, somewhere in between, maybe 32, 33 dates throughout 2025, starting at the very beginning of the year. We know he's going to be in the Rumble or wrestling at the Rumble. I would imagine in the Royal Rumble match. I would believe The Rock will be back in the WWE at some point in 2025. I would imagine the first quarter as we build towards WrestleMania. Maybe more in 2025, depending on what business is doing in the WWE and who's doing what. If everything counts, and we know everything counts, I wonder what the final boss would think, depending on what his relationship is like with Roman Reigns, of John Cena putting him at number 2. And is this real-life conversation something that could spill into WWE world? I'm not saying it definitely will. I'm not even saying probably. I'm just saying what if. Interesting. Please forgive the interruption, but we all love our alma mater. Syracuse is it for me. You can show your support by betting on your team this football season, and MyBookie lets you get in on the action with their amazing sportsbook and casino platform. You don't even need to download an app. You just click my link, sign up, and you're good to go. Lay down your investment before the season starts so you don't have to stress about it later. I can't let go of Syracuse. The football team was terrible when I went to school there. The basketball team won a national championship. So, you know, I'm a little more partial to basketball, but football, I'll always stay loyal. And this helps, and it keeps it exciting, too. Cheers to a great, whatever, sports season with MyBookie. Lock your futures in now while you're waiting for the season to begin. And use promo code NOTSAM to claim a bonus up to $1,000 on that first deposit. That's not Sam to start the college football season off with house money. What could be better? Don't ever miss out on the action. Bet anything, anywhere, anytime, only with MyBookie. I think very interesting thing to think about with Roman Reigns is what his status is right now, right? Because he came back at SummerSlam. He did 2 SmackDowns. First SmackDown, he just destroyed the Bloodline. Second SmackDown, he started to destroy the Bloodline, but then here comes the difference maker, Jacob Fatu, which I think it feels like we're all getting a better idea of what this current Bloodline is. This idea that the criticism that Solo Sikoa is not a real threat to Roman Reigns. Solo Sikoa is not supposed to be a real threat to Roman Reigns. Ultimately, when Roman Reigns was on his reign of terror, the foundation of that reign of terror was we all know he actually is the top guy in the industry. Solo Sikoa, crowning himself the tribal chief and trying to start a reign of terror, when there is that foundation isn't there, and we all know he's not the top guy in the industry, defines the character of Solo Sikoa. That's who he's supposed to be. The Tongans are a great tag team, but they're not Roman Reigns great. This is why Jacob Fatu has been portrayed in such a way that he's really only had, 1-2 matches? I don't even think he's had a singles match. And still has been portrayed in this way where he's just utterly dominant over everybody. There's no stopping this guy, including Roman Reigns. So the thing is not, can Roman Reigns beat Solo Sikoa? It's, can Roman Reigns beat Solo Sikoa while Jacob Fatu is standing there? And can Roman Reigns beat Jacob Fatu? Jacob Fatu rolled up to SmackDown in his boot again. Just when you are beating the ever-loving stuff out of everybody around you and you've got an ankle boot on, it's a special occasion. You're a special type of human being / monster. But Solo Sikoa is cutting his promo. Jacob Fatu has his tag team championship title that he won alongside Tama Tonga, because it was originally supposed to be the former Gorillas of Destiny, Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa, in that tag team gauntlet. But Tonga Loa was injured in storyline, and so Jacob Fatu came in and ended up winning the tag team championship in Cleveland from DIY alongside Tama Tonga. Solo Sikoa turns to Jacob Fatu and says, Jacob, give your title to Tonga Loa. And what seems at first like this ultimate test of loyalty, and maybe it was an ultimate test of loyalty. Jacob Fatu is a little bit rageful, a little bit confused, but Solo Sikoa, I love you, Solo Sikoa. I love you, Solo. I acknowledge you. He gives the title to Tonga Loa. And Solo Sikoa explains the reason he wants Tonga Loa to have that title is because Jacob Fatu is there to be his enforcer. And he doesn't want Jacob distracted by anything except enforcing what the tribal chief Solo Sikoa needs enforced. When was the last time you saw an enforcer that looked utterly unstoppable, that fans actually really started to get behind, who was distracted by nothing except helping and protecting his tribal chief? That was Solo Sikoa. Solo Sikoa's loyalty to Roman Reigns was so blind that he would take out his brothers, Jimmy and Jey Uso, if he needed to protect his tribal chief. Remember, it was Solo Sikoa that was about to drive that thumb into the neck of Jey Uso at Tribal Court right before the Royal Rumble of 2023 with Sami Zayn there. Or was he about... No, I'm sorry. He's going to drive the thumb into Sami's neck, and then Jey stopped him. But I feel like he did it to Jey. Whatever. It was well established that Solo was willing to take out his brothers if the tribal chief said so. And now we're in a position where Solo has found himself an enforcer in Jacob Fatu. But what was more important is that when you looked at it, Roman Reigns clearly got taken out the exact same way that the wise man got taken out. That triple power bomb through the commentary table, and Roman Reigns is laid out. We have not seen the wise man come back since that happened. And this week on SmackDown, you had commentary speculating as to whether or not Roman Reigns would be back at all. I think that what we've got here is a question. First of all, I think we know how we're going to wait until Survivor Series to see this start to get settled out. I would imagine that whatever multi-person situation we get at Survivor Series, I think we've got to get some kind of bloodline versus Roman Reigns and either the OG bloodline or a super team of baby faces. You know, maybe Roman and Cody actually team up, like whatever it is. That's got to happen at Survivor Series, but I believe that what we'll see is the beginning of Roman Reigns versus the bloodline at Survivor Series as opposed to the climax. That War Games, or maybe they'll just do a traditional Survivor Series match, will be the beginning of the bloodline civil war and not the culmination. I truly think that at WrestleMania, we're still going to end up with either Roman versus Solo, or maybe we'll get Roman versus Jacob at WrestleMania and Rock versus Cody. And I could be wrong. You know, maybe I'm going too far in advance. But what I started to want, and that's only because, like, okay, Roman's not here. He's clearly not going to be at Bash in Berlin. Then what do we got? We got Bad Blood to get through. I believe we've got a Saudi pay-per-view, maybe, and then Survivor Series. I think that's right. What I wonder is, do we get a second Roman Reigns return? Roman Reigns returned after WrestleMania at SummerSlam, and it's really funny because there were those that said, well, returning at SummerSlam already, that's too soon. And they didn't realize 2 weeks later he'd be written off TV again. So how long are we going to wait? Like, is this something that we're not going to get? Is Roman going to show up at Bash in Berlin? Is this something where we're going to have to wait all the way until Bad Blood? And wait until whenever that is, end of September, beginning of October, whenever Bad Blood is? You know, and if so, does Roman get another return? Does Roman get another big pop? Does Roman get whatever? And realistically, I don't think we can get Paul Heyman returning without Roman Reigns. I kind of wonder if we can get Jimmy Uso returning without Roman Reigns, unless Jimmy Uso is going to be doing something completely different, which wouldn't make a lick of sense. It kind of feels like we got to wait until the OTC comes back for all of those pieces to come into effect. We time things out according to pay-per-views, but what if it doesn't happen at a pay-per-view? You know, there is this SmackDown transition that's happening, I think, sooner than any of us really realize. You know, I think that the first SmackDown on USA is like September 13th or something like that. That's in like, what, 2 weeks? What is it? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, I think it's in like maybe 2 weeks? Maybe. Okay, yeah, 2 weeks would be, right, so 3 weeks. 3 weeks, I think is the first SmackDown on USA. If I'm wrong, put it in the comments or whatever. But I think it's around then. It wouldn't surprise me if that's when Roman comes back. That Roman comes back for the first SmackDown on USA. I would imagine that that's around the same time that we're going to get Michael Cole moving over to SmackDown with whoever Michael Cole's going to be with. We don't know right now, because when Joe Tessitore was coming over to WWE, the press release said he was going to be in a 3-man booth with Corey Graves and Wade Barrett. But if I think Tessitore is going to be on Raw, Pat McAfee's off Raw. I mean, unless you're going to put Barrett and Tessitore on Raw, and then maybe Graves and Cole on SmackDown, and then once Netflix starts, when Pat McAfee comes back, maybe that's when the 3-man booth starts on SmackDown, and you have Cole and McAfee back on Raw in January. maybe that's what we get, right? Maybe it's Barrett and Tessitore starting around the 13th, 14th, 16th of September or so on Raw, and then maybe starting the 13th, we're back to having Graves and Cole. It's possible. I don't know. A lot of things could happen, but this isn't about commentary. This is about Roman Reigns and coming back. You know, SmackDown starting on USA, that's September 13th. That's about 6 weeks before Survivor Series. The pace at which this Bloodline story is told, I think, gives us just enough time to get there. If I had to put money on it, if you said, Sam, when do you think Roman Reigns will be back? I would say I think / hope Roman comes back for that first SmackDown on USA. I could be totally wrong. It could be Bad Blood. It could be back in Berlin for all I know. But who knows? What I do know is that AEW had a pretty incredible Sunday. I was going to say Sunday night, but it was Sunday afternoon here in the States. AEW All In London went down on Sunday, and it was it was really a great show. Really a great show. Great payoffs to some great stories. People really invested, and 50,000 people in Wembley Stadium that were eating up just about everything. We had the 0 hour where kind of the big takeaways. First of all, let's make sure we know what guys are wearing. 2 people in a single match, both wearing Wolverine outfits and being on separate teams. So you actually saw Brian Cage and Sammy Guevara wrestling each other, both dressed as Wolverine, was a little insane. Maybe one of them could have been Deadpool. Wolverine versus that could have been fun. I don't know. But we got the announcements. We got the announcement that Swerve had re-signed. We got the announcement that this year or next year, AEW Grand Slam is going to Brisbane, Australia, and I believe will be a pay-per-view in February. And Forbidden Door is going to be in London. So next year's All In, I think, is going to be in July, and that's going to be in Texas. And then at this same time in August, a year from now, we'll have another London show or England show for AEW, and that'll be Forbidden Door. So, and I don't know when Forbidden Door is maybe Forbidden Door is usually in February, and that's when they're doing Grand Slam. I don't know. I don't know when Forbidden Door usually is, but and then we also, of course, this was big, got the return of Jamie Hayter. I was surprised that Jamie Hayter returned on the pre-show and not the show, but maybe there was so much going on the show that it was like, let's take a second that we can just give Jamie Hayter the spotlight. And also maybe people get so excited. People love Jamie Hayter. Maybe people will get so excited that it'll get them to tune into the pay-per-view. Man, if this is what we're doing on the pre-show, imagine what we got on this pay-per-view. And hopefully that worked because, I mean, the Jamie Hayter spot was awesome. If you haven't seen Jamie Hayter in action, if you're not the biggest AEW fan, check her out. She's unbelievable. And the fact that she and Britt Baker are both back in that women's division. And they've also got Mercedes. They've got Mariah May, Toni Storm, Thunder Rosa. I mean, they've got the makings for a pretty strong women's division. And they're at the point where now, I mean, the idea of Mercedes versus Jamie Hayter at some point is very, very exciting to me. So the pay-per-view proper starts with Pac, Wheeler Yuta, and Claudio Castagnoli winning the Trios title in a ladder match. The ladder match was exactly what you would expect. A great opening show ladder match. Hard-hitting, fast-moving, bodies flying around everywhere that you look. And I expected, actually, the patriarchy, Christian and Luchasaurus in the gang, Killshot, to win. I thought they were going to retain the title, but it kind of made sense with where that all went, which we'll talk about. But yeah, so Pac, Wheeler Yuta, and Claudio Castagnoli winning the Trios Championship. So that was good. Mariah May won the Women's World Championship from Toni Storm in what was one of my favorite matches on the show. Not surprised it was one of my favorite matches on the show, but there was a lot put into it. And a lot can go wrong when all that is put into it. And I would say nothing really went wrong in this match. Not only was it a satisfying payoff to what we've had going on, but it also left room for so much more. I think the arc of Mariah May and Toni Storm has just been a fabulous piece of storytelling that AEW has done. Watching Mariah May, who's always been a little nutty, use that nuttiness to become a true villain, where she's just seeing her bloody up Toni Storm evolve into Tura Satana from Faster Pussycat Kill in the lead up to All In. Seeing Mariah May at ringside, her own mother is in the audience. She slapped her own mother in the face, this Mariah May did. And then at the very end, there's a shoe. Who throws a shoe anyway? That shoe that pierced the skull of Toni Storm. Toni Storm has it in her possession. Referee is distracted. She is ready to dig it right into Mariah May, and she can't do it because of the connection that she and Mariah May had made. And that hesitation, that mistake, was just what Mariah May needed to take advantage and become the women's world champion herself, defeating the very fan favorite Toni Storm, which is a risky move at a show like this. But I think people are so on board with this story that it was okay. And as Toni Storm exited, it seemed like she was going through a true crisis of conscience, where it was like, what am I feeling right now? Am I happy that the fans are cheering for me? What happened to my title? Who am I without the championship? Hook won back the FTW title from, hi guys, the Learning Tree, Chris Jericho. It's interesting. I thought this was great. I thought it was really fun to watch how over Big Bill is with the UK crowd. Sometimes they just pick somebody and go, that's our guy. And this time it was Big Bill, and I love it for him because he's a great dude. But I think that there's been, everybody knows Hook is Taz's son. But Taz has done such an interesting job a great job in hindsight, but we didn't really know what the payoff was going to be. But Taz acknowledges Hook as his son seldom to never. Like, he doesn't even do commentary in an overly emotional, hey, that's my son way. When stuff goes really wonky, you hear the anger in Taz's voice, sure. But generally speaking, he's that father from a distance going, hey, I want to let my son do his thing. And there's no even real reference to the fact that that's his kid. And when there is a reference, Taz kind of no-sells it. Not in a, that's not my son, but no-selling it in a, yep, well, Hook's going to have to do this, Hook's going to have to do that. But we find, we all want to see Taz. Anybody that grew up watching ECW, we all want to see Taz get dangerous again. We all want to see the human suplex machine. We all want to see the guy who offered people the opportunity to beat him if you can, survive if he lets you. And we want to see that in the context of protecting his offspring. We finally got it when Hook applied the Kata Hajime, the Taz mission. At least I think it was. He was choking out Chris Jericho in the ring, and Taz has had enough of the Learning Tree interfering in this match and disgracing the FTW championship as well as his own flesh and blood. And he puts the bounty hunter, Brian Keith, in the Taz mission and then hugs his son. And you just don't see the hug. It wasn't this over-emotional thing, but just the fact that this old school badass dad like Taz finally hugs that kid is like, there it is. There's the payoff. I think everybody loved that moment. It was really cool. And of course, always kind of amazing to see these huge shows and Chris Jericho singing himself to the ring, performing with Fozzy as he gets to the ring for his own match. This was another one that I didn't see coming, and I thought Hook would win. I did not think the Young Bucks would retain, but they did. The Young Bucks retain over FTR and the Acclaimed. I really thought that FTR was going to win this match, and they were going to rebuild the tag division around FTR. And they still could have, I think, but the big hook, for lack of a better term, in this match was the grizzled young vets who at one point were in NXT, and they were Joe Gacy's partners in the Schism. The grizzled young vets showed up. Of course, this was the perfect place for them to show up because the UK loves them. And they stared down the Bucks, and as the Bucks retreated, they attacked Dax of FTR. And it was still left as kind of a mystery. Are they just there to fight every tag team? That's why they stared down the Bucks and then attacked FTR? Or was that a ruse? Did they stare down the Bucks and the Bucks knew exactly why they were there? And then they attacked FTR. Either way, I think this is a very good opportunity, especially with a new great team like the Grizzled Young Vets there, for them to really hone in and give some tender love and care to that tag team division. Because there was a time when that was AEW's, that was really one of the things that separated them. They had great tag team wrestling. And I think that division has needed attention for a little bit now. And I think that having all this happen and the Grizzly Young Vets come out and they stare down the Bucks and they attack FTR, there's enough going on there that you've got it. You had your Casino Gauntlet match where Orange Cassidy, and, I spent 4 years of my childhood growing up in England. So, boy, did that intro hit hard for me. Orange Cassidy parodied Mr. Bean, which is, one of the greatest comedy characters ever performed. Rowan Atkinson's genius work that was huge in the UK. And he came over to the States. I think he did a movie, but it never hit as hard in the States as it did in the UK. Mr. Bean was an icon over there. And I can't tell you how much time I spent watching Mr. Bean shows. And that intro of the spotlight, as soon as the spotlight showed up on that stone floor, I went, oh my God, tell me they're tributing Mr. Bean here. Because that's what would happen. The spotlight would come down and Mr. Bean would fall from the spotlight, but he'd just fall like a thump. And then he'd go the wrong way, and Orange Cassidy remade it. And to me, it brought me back to my childhood. I had a unique childhood as compared to some of our American listeners, I'm sure. But still, awesome Mr. Bean entrance. And then the single firework that went off. One of my favorite shots of the entire pay-per-view was not just the single firework going off as Orange Cassidy came to the ring and surprising him, but when they went to the long shot of Wembley Stadium, and you just saw one firework shooting out of the roof. It was genius. I love the whole thing. But this was a really fun Casino Gauntlet match. We had teased that Evil Uno would be in it, and apparently Hangman Page's attack on him was enough to take him out of the match entirely. But so we got Orange Cassidy starting it out, but we got Okada in it. We got Zack Sabre Jr. in it. Obviously, Hangman Page was in it. Jeff Jarrett was in it. The whole thing changes when Ricochet shows up. Ricochet has officially made his AEW debut. He showed up to that Casino Gauntlet. And of course, as soon as Ricochet shows up, and boy did he show up, he took control of that match. You think it's going to be Ricochet's match. There's a little part of me that was like, I hope it goes to Nigel McGuinness, because Nigel McGuinness was my favorite of all those surprises. Knowing how much it means for Nigel McGuinness to get to perform in Wembley Stadium, knowing what a fan I was of Nigel McGuinness in the Ring of Honor days, and the fact that he's just an awesome dude, and that he shows up, he's in amazing shape, and is able to not just take a couple bumps and then retreat to the outside of the ring and just kind of let things happen. He went and played some of the hits too. I was so freaking excited that Nigel McGuinness, and he came out to Oasis and everything. It was awesome. But then after the wonderful surprise of Nigel McGuinness, after the debut of Ricochet, and Ricochet showing everything he's capable of, Hangman showing that desperation of somebody who's at his wit's end and simply needs to end Swerve, Christian came out, and he was limping. He had just lost the Trios Championship in the ladder match to start the show. Now, an hour later, he's in this gauntlet match, and he's clearly in no condition. And the next guy that came out, I think it was the last guy, was Luchasaurus. And Luchasaurus comes out, and it even says Luchasaurus, I believe, on the screen. And people were like, oh, we're going to get it. And he goozles Christian. Because Christian was yelling at him after the ladder match. What did you do? Why would you do that? And blamed Luchasaurus once again for losing a match that Christian was really at fault for losing. So then as Luchasaurus is goozling Christian, he sees somebody behind Christian. I forget who it was as I'm talking to you, but you'll probably remind me. Goozles him, chokeslams him, picks up Christian, and instead of throwing Christian out of the ring, drops Christian on top of somebody. 1, 2, 3. Christian, thanks to Luchasaurus, wins the Casino Gauntlet. I thought it was cool. Nobody saw it coming. Left Hangman in a state. And just when I was ready to say, especially after that trios match, I don't know, man. It feels like I don't know what they're doing with this patriarchy story. It feels like it hit a real high in the Adam Copeland days. And ever since then, it feels like it's lost steam. Boom. Christian, at last. He's got a match whenever he wants for the AEW World Championship, which we'll get to. Because then we got the sunset match. I love a sunset match anytime. I talked about this. I think on the SummerSlam show is where I brought up the sunset match. Anytime the sun is going down, because the first half of the show is all lit up. By the time you get to because the sky, it's early in the day. By the time you get to the main event, it's dark. But there's one special match on the show that gets to be the sunset match because it's dusk. And that match was MJF versus Will Ospreay. It's between this match and Mariah May versus Toni Storm for my two favorite matches, but it's probably this match. Both had spectacular entrances. Will Ospreay with the video game entrance, MJF with the American entrance, but also with the Lex Luger gear on, with the stars and stripes and the triangles and everything. We had, again, a great match between these two. It was obviously going to be different from the hour-long match that they had on Dynamite, but such a great payoff to the story that was told and the stories that have been told from the very beginning. You had Will Ospreay, who has got to be looked at as being completely reckless in the sense that he took out a referee and a cameraman in this match, and both almost screwed him up entirely until a masked man interfered and distracted MJF. And who was that masked man? Daniel Garcia. I get what you're saying. I thought it'd be a big surprise. I thought it'd be a big debut. Sometimes it is so rewarding when you realize a story has come absolutely full circle. And that's what we got with this Daniel Garcia. How did the Will Ospreay MJF story begin? It was MJF humiliating and degrading and beating Daniel Garcia. And it felt like Daniel Garcia was just an appetizer. The Daniel Garcia was simply there to transition MJF into being a true heel to get him to this Will Ospreay match. What we didn't count on was the fact that the way life works, we may be done with our past, but our past ain't done with us. And the past of MJF came right back and said, no. Sorry, buddy. You left some loose ends in this story. And there is nothing as a fan that I like more than an acknowledgement of loose ends. I hate when there are loose ends and they just go, oh yeah, that's just a thing that happened. Because it's like, well, then why am I paying attention? Why am I invested at all? When there are consequences to leaving loose ends and those loose ends are going to get paid off, it makes me feel rewarded as a viewer. So I loved the Daniel Garcia coming in. And then Will Ospreay does the thing that everybody's been waiting for, hits that Tiger Driver that he promised never to do because, let's face it, MJF is a villainous dude and deserved it. 1, 2, 3, gets announced as the new AEW American Champion, will not take MJF's title, and here comes the fallen angel, Christopher Daniels, to hand him over the newly renamed AEW International Championship, and we're back with Will Ospreay as international champion. Yeah, this is probably my favorite match on the show. As I'm thinking about it and talking about it, I would say, yeah, it's my favorite match. You had Mercedes Moné retaining the AEW TBS Championship against Britt Baker. Jack Perry retained the TNT Championship against Darby Allin in a coffin match. I'm really glad that he retained. I thought if Jack Perry had lost this match, then I would have crown the Jack Perry experiment to not have been successful. But the fact that we're still moving and still going leaves me with, okay, I'm still riding. We got a couple of good things out of it. We got the Jack Perry victory. I thought the body bag spot was good, where Jack Perry first put Darby Allin in a body bag. Darby Allin was trying to fight Jack Perry through the body bag, and still Jack Perry throws him in the coffin, shuts it, wins the match, and then here come the Young Bucks to try to light the thing on fire. They open it. I thought they're going to light the box on fire, and, you know, through the magic of television, Darby Allin doesn't actually get burned to death. But then they open it. They open the casket, and they start pouring gasoline all over Darby Allin, who's in that body bag, which you can't fake that he's not in. There's been no time. And then you hear Sting, and people go nuts, ape. They lose their minds as Sting shows up and stops the Bucks and Jack Perry from burning Darby Allin alive. And this idea that Sting may be retired, but he will always have Darby Allin's back. AEW having established that kind of forever friendship where no matter what, Darby Allin and Sting are connected and have each other's back is so cool. And we haven't seen Sting since his retirement match. So this was a big moment, I think, for Wembley, and they all loved it. You know, at one point, Jack Perry had a thumbtack bag, and he poured it, and it was glass. Which, of course, real glass, Cry Me a River. The fans first start chanting F CM Punk, and then they were just chanting CM Punk. And I get it. Trust me, I understand. We are a year removed from the incident. And maybe they felt it was important that something be said, that Jack Perry went from having this match on the pre-show and then having the backstage altercation with CM Punk that led to, you know, CM Punk being gone, Jack Perry being suspended, and the birth of this scapegoat character. But realistically speaking, I don't think it benefits AEW at all to bring up any of the CM Punk stuff, because CM Punk's post-AEW career in WWE has been incredibly successful, and all you hear is good things about him. So just the idea, I mean, it goes back to what CM Punk said in an interview where it's like, okay, you can play the footage if you want. I'm not sure what that does except make him the biggest babyface in two companies. You know, I get it. I'm not offended by it. It's not a terrible idea necessarily, but what are you really benefiting from it? You know, I think that the character of the scapegoat has to exist beyond what happened at All In 2023. Because if it's just relying on this thing that happened at All In 2023, the origin story of this heel is based upon a babyface who's main eventing WWE pay-per-views. And I don't think you want that. So then after the coffin match, which was great, I believe that is when you had your world title match, title versus career, amazing entrances. This also was an awesome match. Bryan Danielson comes down to the final countdown. And, like, I can't really express to what degree of a fan of Bryan Danielson I am. I was a massive Bryan Danielson fan in Ring of Honor. I was a massive fan of when he signed to WWE. I was excited about it. I watched that whole silly NXT game show season where he had to drink a soda when he was on it. I went to indie shows so I could see him in that in-between time where he was fired from WWE before he came back. Actually, I think I went to when they let him keep his dates after they brought him back. So, like, they brought him back that summer at SummerSlam, and I think he still had dates in September and October, and I think I went to see him in September and got a picture with him. Just the biggest fan of his WWE career, to Team Hell No, to the whole establishment of the no, to, you know, losing to Sheamus in seconds. That was the beginning of this build to the Yes-O-Mania movement, to going into WrestleMania 30. I think people forget how amazing the ladder match was when he won as Intercontinental Champion at WrestleMania 31. The return at WrestleMania 30, 4, was it? Yeah. The return at WrestleMania 34. Even the Planet Champion when he was the WWE champion, but he had the hemp title that led into Kofi Mania. The fact that Kofi Mania was built on beating the guy that did Yeselmania was like the most poetic wrestling story that you can tell. I'm just a huge Bryan Danielson guy. So the fact that he came out to the Final Countdown, had that huge entrance, had this moment, Brie and his kids are there at ringside, so great. And then Swerve comes out, and of course, my friend of all people, DJ Who Kid, posing the question, is the UK in the house? And then bringing out Swerve, who was wrapped to the ring, I believe, by flash garments the whole way. Just what I loved about it was Swerve owning the moment. That there wasn't anything about Swerve that seemed like he was lost in this thing. There wasn't anything about Swerve that seemed like, I don't know if I should be main eventing Wembley. There was nothing. It was all like, yep, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And that's how Swerve presented himself. And I thought, for somebody that has been on the ride that Swerve's been on, to have that much faith in yourself is an amazing thing, especially when it's well-founded. Great match. Beyond the mat flashbacks for sure, with Brian's kids watching. The medical team at one point came out to check on Brian, which we've seen in matches before, which I think will get really interesting. Because the idea of him being AEW champion for these because he promised his daughter he wasn't going to be a full-time wrestler by the end of this year. And the idea that for the next few months he's going to be AEW champion while his body deteriorates, I think is really, really something. We got the Hangman distraction, not physical interference, but distraction, which makes sense. I was a little worried, however, it didn't cause the outcome of the match. I was really glad that that's not how Brian won the title. That a couple of minutes later, Brian was able to pull off the sequence that led to him becoming the AEW champion as Swerve tapped out to that LeBell lock. But yeah, Swerve tapping out and the whole thing. And, it leaves us in a good position, right? That it's not just like, okay, what's next? Or, well, what are we going to do? Rematches here? Because we've got Hangman and Swerve completely reignited. We've got MJF looking to move on to Daniel Garcia. We've got Ricochet now showing up, and it's like, where is he going to go? His name was brought up to Will Ospreay in the press conference, but Will Ospreay said there's a lot of people to beat before you get a shot at the international champion, and so on and so on. So, you've got, I would think Tony Storm wants a rematch. I would think Britt Baker wants a rematch, but now Jamie Hayter's back in the picture. So where does all that lead us? I don't know, but I'm interested to see. And I thought it was all really well done. A great pay-per-view by AEW. We've got a strap match confirmed for Bash in Berlin. CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre. I think that this should be. I believe that what we'll see, interestingly enough, when you put it in this context, is I think we'll see CM Punk's first televised victory in the WWE in a decade plus now at this point, right? Because CM Punk has had a couple of victories over Dominic Mysterio at live events, but realistically, he's had 2 matches since he returned. Royal Rumble, which he lost, and Drew McIntyre at SummerSlam, which he lost. So, I also don't see Drew McIntyre getting 2 in a row. I see strap match stipulation with enough room for chicanery, the same way we got chicanery with a special guest referee stipulation at SummerSlam. I think CM Punk will win this one. I think we get the bracelet back to CM Punk. I don't think we're talking about this bracelet anymore after the Bash in Berlin match. But I do think there is room for one more Drew McIntyre CM Punk match. There'll be 1-1. I think we will get a rubber match. I think it won't be about the bracelet. It won't be about the family. It won't be about anything other than who's better. So I think we've got CM Punk winning the strap match at Bash in Berlin, which is actually happening quicker than I think most of us thought. I figured that we wouldn't get this match until maybe Bad Blood, but maybe we will get that Hell in a Cell at Bad Blood, right? That we had a special guest referee, we had a strap match. Now it's like enough of the nonsense. Just me and you in a cage, one winner. No bracelet, no nothing. Just who's better, and then we move on. And we'll never truly move on, but that's when we find a new rivalry for Drew McIntyre. We find a new rivalry for CM Punk. And every now and then, we sprinkle in a little of that magic. Don't forget, Drew hates Punk. Don't forget, Punk hates Drew. And we keep this as one of those rivalries that just lasts forever. Because based on what Punk and Drew have said every opportunity they've had, Punk has said Drew won't hold the title as long as there's a breath in his lungs. Drew has said Punk won't do it as long as he's in the WWE. So it's going to get interesting at some point. They're going to be in title matches, and do we stand by that? Or maybe once one of them wins a title, maybe there's a confrontation the next night in the locker room or whatever, and they go, hey, I thought you weren't going to let this happen. And then the other one says, well, I let it happen because I'm going to be the one that takes it from you, and just walks off. And that's when we revisit. That's the beauty of this, right? You do your 3 matches now, and then 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months from now, you're able to revisit and go, yep, we can do another Punk Drew match, and that can keep going forever. It's the beauty of professional wrestling. You know what else is the beauty of professional wrestling? What we saw over the weekend. So a week ago, JBL showed up with a cowboy hat and a black duster at AAA, Triple Mania, which I believe was in Arena, Mexico, but whatever, Triple A's Triple Mania, and was in Nick Nemeth's corner, the former Dolph Ziggler. Well, this weekend, JBL showed up in GCW. JBL, with his black duster, with his cowboy hat, the ultimate heel, shows up in GCW, helps Mance Warner win a ladder match to retain the GCW World Championship, takes out Effie with, I believe, 2 clotheslines from hell. So he actually got physicality from JBL and just makes the world stand on their feet. I mean, it was the coolest thing. Look it up on Twitter. The video is amazing. It's reminding me, it's giving me that same energy of like when Cardona first got to GCW, when we realized something new was happening. You know, first we had Jinder showing up, but JBL, I think, is one that nobody had on their bingo card. And then, by the way, on night 2 of GCW's homecoming, SDL and Matt Cardona and Jimmy Lloyd Broski showed up in a Jurassic Park Jeep. What kind of production value is Matt Cardona bringing to this Outlaw Mud show? It is amazing that Cardona really showed what you can do in a high-profile indie and how you can utilize that, like, us versus them means you can bring them in. It's almost like when Jerry Lawler came to the ECW arena and was the ultimate heel. That's what Matt Cardona was able to do for GCW. And now there's you know, as much as people will boo him, there is an appreciation and an awareness for everything Matt Cardona did for GCW. So how do you keep that level of heat? I can't think of a bigger heat magnet than JBL at an indie show. Are you kidding me? Beautiful. I just love that it happened. I love that they figured out how to make it happen. I love that it happened. And I love that I get emails. So email in, notsamwrestling@gmail.com is our email address. It's notsamwrestling@gmail.com if you'd like to be a part of the show. Notsamwrestling@gmail.com. By the way, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Not only last week did the Paul Heyman interview from Fanatics Fest go up, but on Friday, the Drew McIntyre interview went up, and that was a YouTube exclusive. So if you want to see the interview with Drew McIntyre from Fanatics Fest just last weekend, go over to the Not Sam Wrestling YouTube channel, hit subscribe, watch that video, leave a comment, hit like. And later this week on the podcast feed, both on video on Not Sam Wrestling on YouTube, as well as on the audio feed of the podcast, my interview with Rey Mysterio will be out in just later this week. So check it out. Not Sam Wrestling again at gmail.com, notsamwrestling@gmail.com. Spencer writes in, Sam, this is a question coming from my 11-year-old son, Ethan. Oh, now I can't roast it. who wanted me to ask and listens weekly with me. He's studied up on a lot of history. I love this already. His question is, based off of these 4 heels, how would you rank them as far as how good of a heel they were? Edge, Seth Rollins, Randy Orton, CM Punk. Oof, that's good. I'm going to go best to worst, okay? And there's criteria here, right? I think that the criteria that I'm going to use, because they're all awesome, but I think the criteria that I'm going to use is, were you able to be an effective heel, meaning people truly hated you, people truly booed you, people wanted to see you lose, and you were able to make a good guy look better. Randy Orton is number 1. Seth Rollins is number 2. I almost put Edge as number 2. Randy Orton's easy number 1, because, I mean, the despicable things that Randy Orton would do. I was going to put Edge as number 2 because he really committed to doing it, but Seth Rollins, I don't think people remember how bad, like, the Shield was beloved. And Seth Rollins turning on the Shield and turning on Roman Reigns and going with Triple H and then winning his matches Weasley. Like, the original Seth Rollins heel run was one of the great heel runs. So I'll go Randy Orton, Seth Rollins, Edge, CM Punk. And CM Punk would be a lot higher, except even at his worst, even at his scummiest, even at straight edge society, no matter how big of a heel he was cool. People still liked him. So that's probably how I rank them. Randy, Seth, Edge, and Punk. But I'm willing to hear other opinions on that, and I'm sure other people will rank them very differently. James writes in, hey, Sam, not Sam, the one and only PTC. That's Podcast Tribal Chief. I figured that out. I just wanted to say how awesome it was to see Taz lock on the Taz mission. Anyway, it's a great time to be a wrestling fan. Keep on doing what you're doing. Love your stuff. Thank you, James. You're not wrong. It was really cool to see it again. Sarah writes in, hi, my Podcast Tribal Chief. I acknowledge you. I appreciate that. You're the GOAT. I would agree with that. With Ricochet debuting at the Gauntlet match, do you think we get Will and Ricochet right off the bat with what Will said on Twitter? If not, who do you think Ricochet's first match is against and why? I think Ricochet will wrestle on Dynamite. I think Ricochet's going to wrestle right away. And I'm good with that. I think Ricochet should be wrestling right away. I think we'll eventually get Will and Ricochet. I think they are going to protect the title enough to not have somebody just come in and instantly get the shot at it. Will we, because the next pay-per-view is in like 2 weeks, right? So do we have Ricochet already ready to get a shot at the International Championship in 2 weeks? I don't think so. But who does he face? I mean, look, there's a lot. I want to see Ricochet versus Ospreay. I want to see Ricochet versus Bryan. I want to see Ricochet versus Swerve to go back to the Lucha Underground days. But there's so many people that Ricochet could face, you know? So I don't know right now. But I wouldn't think we'll get the Ospreay match first. I don't think it's time, but I could be wrong. Dirk writes in, for what it's worth, my son sees and hears you enough between the podcast and your cameos. He thinks you're the head of the WWE, so congrats on that. A lot of people think I'm the face of the WWE. I was on SmackDown Lowdown this week, be back on Raw Talk. I'm all over the place. With the Wyatt Six, what do you think will be their end game with the people they go after? Just torture them, or are they trying to change the people? I originally thought the latter, but not sure anymore. I was convinced the Jey Uso involvement was actually hinting Jimmy would be a victim and that would somehow bring them back together, but I doubt that's the case. No, I think it's more about teaching them a lesson. I think that they find the people that are changed are the lost souls that they find. I think the people who they want to punish are just people that they punish. And hopefully a lesson has been taught and they're able to move on. I think that's the end game. Salty, right? Oh, Jack from Michigan writes in, hey, Sam, first time in a long time. I acknowledge you as the GOAT. I appreciate that. I would agree with that sentiment. I just wanted to say how awesome the Paul Heyman episode was. I started watching pre-WrestleMania 36. And Bray Wyatt-Randy Orton feud was a big reason I got into the WWE. Wow. and especially the Bloodline story. So listening to that episode was pretty great. Thank you for being you and producing great content each week. I'm a weekly listener and always so excited for the next one to drop. Love from Michigan. I love Michigan. I got family in Michigan. That's where both sets of grandparents were. I still have a grandfather in Michigan, as a matter of fact. Detroit. Let's see. Ryan writes in, much love from Scotland. Oh. Enjoy the haggis. Hope you are good. I am good. I acknowledge you as the tribal chief of wrestling podcasts. Now I'm even better. Are people putting too much on the Terror Twins being faces when everything that happened was their fault and the new Judgment Day is just karma playing out? Once again, thank you for the content and for helping me bring me back into the wrestling fold this past year. No. I think that you're not wrong, by the way, that logically it is their fault, but sometimes that's just the way it is. A lot of times when you go back to Hulk Hogan's rivalries with big-time villains, more often than not, the villains were right. More often than not, the villains were right about Hogan, but Hogan was just a babyface. It just was what it was. The Terror Twins are just babyfaces. You're not going to boo Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley right now. It just is what it is. Did their egos and their quest for leadership screw up the Judgment Day? Yeah, of course. Did Damian Priest getting awarded Hater of the Week multiple weeks in a row because he wasn't letting Dominic live while Rhea was gone and Liv Morgan was hollering? Did that hurt the Judgment Day? Yeah. But apparently we don't talk about that. Simone writes in. Oh, from Belgium. I love that. Hope you and your family are doing great. They're fabulous. We're fabulous. I have a short question for you. Those are my favorite kind. Is there any move that you miss in WWE? I noticed that wrestling evolves a lot and some things disappear out of nowhere. For example, the bear hug. I remember it being used a lot until the 2000s. And I would love to see someone like Bronson Reed have an opponent pass out with a bear hug to assert even more dominance. Is there any move that you miss and you'd like to have back? I don't know. I'm not off the top of my head. I mean, having Bronson Reed actually win a match with the bear hug would be impressive. It's been a while since we had a good full Nelson. You know, what's it probably? Well, I guess Bobby Lashley did the Hurt Lock for a while, so maybe not. I would say the Kona Crush. You know, Crush used to crush his opponent's skulls and he'd pick them up by their head and slam them. Probably a Kona Crush. I think the power bomb is probably my favorite move. I love a power bomb. I go nuts when I see power bombs, and people don't do power bombs that much. You know, the Bloodline will put people through a table with the power bomb, but just in a match doing a power bomb, that's why I love Diesel so much. Just jackknifing everybody. It was awesome. We got a big fan from India writing in. Hope you're doing well, Podcast Tribal Chief. I am doing well. What I am thinking and speculating is that Cody Rhodes is not going to turn heel because WWE hasn't gotten these types of baby faces in years. Sounds like you listen to the podcast, my friend. Rather, Cody should turn more savage on Mike. Something like what Cena did after he was not able to beat CM Punk on Mike during their rivalry. Yeah, I think that there can be people, like maybe if the final boss comes back and starts challenging Cody Rhodes, then Cody Rhodes can really show what a beast he's capable of being. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm not about Cody turning heel. Let's go to Brian S. WWE announced on Monday that Pat McAfee will be off commentary for a while. I prayed for this and it happened. Come on. Pat McAfee has added so much to WWE and media in general that haters really can't wrap their heads around it. Like, I am able to do this podcast where I can say whatever I want. I can go over this AEW pay-per-view. I can do whatever I want on it. And still do all these WWE shows and work for WWE regularly. Why is that? Because WWE sees value in going like, you know what? If our people have their own independent stuff going on and it's successful and they're on our show, it only makes things better. Why is that? In my opinion, McAfee has a lot to do with that. Same way outside of WWE and sports media, the idea that people can get hired to do what they do, as opposed to finding and hiring somebody to fill a role that you've already created. McAfee on ESPN. McAfee is a real trailblazer. And this podcast, Notsam Wrestling, whether it's even in sarcastic form, will never be a place for any ill will or besmirchment towards Pat McAfee. As Lord of the Marks, there will be none of it ever on Notsam Wrestling. Like, ever. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about loyalty. Like, look, as far as loyalty goes with McAfee, I mean, you're talking about a guy who does a 5-day-a-week show out of Indianapolis. On Monday, ends the show at 2 or 3 p.m., gets on a jet, goes to wherever Raw is, does Raw. After Raw, gets back on the jet so he can go home, go to sleep, wake up, and do his show live from Indianapolis again on Tuesday. I mean, no. There's no questioning that guy's loyalty. Anywho, can we expect to see some Sam Roberts analysis on Monday nights? Okay, now we're getting somewhere. 2 of 3 weeks of your sweet, soothing vocals and historical context, and people will be saying, Pat, who? I'm sure you and Cole would mesh excellently. Well, first of all, I would never take Pat's job, nor would anybody accept me for Pat's job, because Pat McAfee is a legend in our time. That said, if there's whatever it is, 3-4 months, that Pat is busy because he is so very in demand because of his talents, and they want somebody that is going to fit in like a glove with the GOAT, Michael Cole, look, people make their own decisions. Would I call me? I'd have me on speed dial. And by the way, anybody would mesh with Cole. That's what happens when you're a professional. Anybody. Anybody would mesh with Cole because he's the greatest. But I appreciate the sentiment, by the way, except for the McAfee stuff. Positive towards me, appreciated. Negative towards McAfee, never here. All right, last email. Anthony writes in, new listener, and you definitely make my commute to work less painful. That's all I want to do. Do I want to make a great experience? No. Slightly less painful, and it's a W. Wanted to get your opinion on an observation, but watching reruns plus the current SmackDown, the Ulafala being worn by Solo is very different than that of Roman. It looks peeled and chipped, where Roman's always looked pristine without any blemishes. I know everything means something, but do you think this is a way of saying Solo is a paper or false chief, so his Ulafala is less than perfect? I don't think that's what it is. I think that it's not. I think it is significant. I think it has more to do with the fact that Solo doesn't have the same people taking care of him, that Solo doesn't have a command on the bloodline the way Roman did. And maybe part of it too is that is the same Ulafala, that's important, that's the one Roman left behind. And there is no wise man taking care of it. And there are no Usos taking care of it. So this is what happens when Solo takes over. Something to that effect. Hope you enjoyed the show today, guys. I hope everybody's doing great. We got a lot of wrestling to talk about. Wouldn't be surprised if the siren blares at some point this week. We will have the Rey Mysterio interview going up this week. So much to do, so little time. I'm glad you spent some of it with me. Thank you. Have a good one, everybody.